1966, the World Cup did something that sounds impossible now. It locked out an entire continent. Not because Africa had no good teams, not because Africa did not care, not because Africa could not compete, because FIFA decided Africa did not deserve a proper place. Africa's answer was not polite complaint, it was refusal. 15 African teams walked away from World Cup qualifying, and that boycott changed the tournament forever. If this sounds like an old administrative footnote, it wasn't. It was a fight about dignity, power, and who football thought mattered. And the key to the whole story is simple. Africa did not fail to reach the 1966 World Cup. It rejected the terms. For that tournament, FIFA handed out places like this: 10 to Europe, including hosts England, 4 to South America, 1 to North and Central America plus the Caribbean, and for Africa, Asia, and Oceania combined, just 1 shared place. That was the insult at the heart of it. An entire continent full of newly independent nations, growing football cultures, and real ambition was told to fight through a humiliating route for scraps. That was not neutral. That was hierarchy. And in the middle of decolonization, hierarchy was exactly what African leaders and football officials were no longer willing to accept. This was not some abstract administrative injustice. There were real players losing a real stage. Take Ghana. Back-to-back African champions in 1963 and 1965. A side full of belief, talent, and style. One of their stars, Osei Kofi, was so highly regarded that Gordon Banks compared him to George Best. That is what makes this story sting. A player like that never got a World Cup chance. Not because he failed to earn it, because the system was tilted before qualification had even properly begun. And once you understand that, the boycott stops feeling symbolic. It becomes personal. The resistance also had leaders. Ohene John of Ghana, Yidnikachu Tessema of Ethiopia. John sent FIFA a furious telegram condemning the arrangement as pathetic and unsound. His point was brutally simple. If Africa was being asked to invest, travel, compete, and prove itself, then Africa deserved its own place. Tessema pushed the same case and called FIFA's logic a mockery of economics, politics, and geography. That line still hits because it was true. This was not emotional overreaction. It was a clean diagnosis. FIFA wanted Africa involved enough to preserve the image of a world tournament, but not respected enough to guarantee fair representation. Then apartheid made everything uglier. CAF had already expelled South Africa over apartheid. African football had taken a moral stand, but FIFA, under Stanley Roos, kept wobbling around the issue and treating it like an administrative inconvenience instead of the disgrace it was. Because African football was now being told 2 things at once. You do not get a proper place, and even your most basic moral line can be negotiated if FIFA finds it convenient. At that point, this stopped being a complaint about tournament math. It became a continental line in the sand. In July 1964, CAF made its position clear. No guaranteed African place, no participation. FIFA did not move. So in October, all 15 African entrants withdrew. That is the moment that still lands hardest, because it costs something. Boycotts are easy to admire after they work. At the time, this meant players in their prime giving up the biggest stage in football. It meant federations trading immediate exposure for long-term respect. It meant accepting real pain for dignity. Africa was saying something brutally simple. Showing up on humiliating terms is not the same as belonging. And then the 1966 World Cup proved Africa's point anyway. North Korea, one of the outsiders who came through that shared route, beat Italy and then led Portugal 3-0 in the quarterfinal, before Eusebio dragged Portugal back. And Eusebio himself, the tournament's top scorer, was born in Mozambique, then still under Portuguese colonial rule. Mario Coluna too. So while the World Cup went on without Africa, it kept revealing the same truth. The talent was already there. The old hierarchy was the lie. FIFA could ignore African protests for a while, it could not ignore them forever. In 1968, it finally voted to give Africa a guaranteed place at the next World Cup. That did not solve everything, but it proved the boycott had worked. Africa missed 1966, then forced the World Cup to acknowledge Africa properly. That is not symbolism, that is structural victory. And if you reduce this story to a trivia line, Africa boycott in 1966, you miss almost everything important. This was one of the most consequential acts of resistance in football history. Every later African World Cup moment sits somewhere downstream from it. Morocco in 1970, Cameroon in 1990, Senegal in 2002, Ghana in 2010. Morocco again in 2022. Those moments did not appear from nowhere. They came after African football decided that dignity mattered more than access on bad terms. England won the 1966 World Cup, but Africa changed what the World Cup was allowed to be. That is the real legacy. Africa did not fail to reach that tournament. Africa refused a rigged version of it. If this story stayed with you, comment one word: dignity. And if you want more football stories where power, identity, and history collide, follow the channel, because some of the biggest World Cup victories happened before kickoff.